And so, to me, the key is that we should have something within our county to measure us. Because I doubt very seriously that any other county has come up with a measurement system. We can't, for example, we can't get the state offices to come up with a measurement system.
Yeah, I don't, and I don't disagree with you, and I don't know what other counties are doing or not, but you know, but frankly, I'm curious. I would like to know, or to have some degree of comfort of where do we stack up here? Are we the most expensive, the least expensive?
In the interest of moving things along, I would suggest that the subcommittee will meet again, for one thing, and that perhaps at the next meeting we could have one or more of the commissioners come in to address what we might do. We aren't going to flesh it out in one meeting, or maybe all year, I don't know. But at least if we can come up with some concepts that we could deal with, we might be able to do that in the subcommittee meeting. And
could I just say, give one example? The jail. We're reviewing the policies. Now, you and I probably don't understand the policies. We checked with other counties. The other counties just put the policies in, not checking whether it's legal, whether it'll stand up in court or not. We have looked at a national association. They're going to look at portion of the policies because it's really thick, so they only want to look at portion of it. And we're going to have an attorney look at the rest. So we're going to be far ahead of all the other counties as far as having something that will stand up in court and will be signed off by an attorney who has looked at the policy. So we're taking a proactive, and it's all due to our superintendent of the jail. And he's talked to the others at their affiliate meetings with other counties.
Okay, let's move on. We do have people leaving, and Commissioner Solomon, if you have one comment to make.
Just quickly, I think that to some extent, what you're considering doing is being done on an unofficial basis.
Okay.
Yeah, and we can find it from the Association of Counties, and also we get comparisons all the time in our committee from municipal and county, so we'll be able to do it so that you know what's happening and where we are standing in the, how are we population-wise and whatnot.
But that input maybe could be brought to the subcommittee, and then we can deal with that. But that would be good. It would just illuminate the minds of each one of us, perhaps, is that. So I'm going to turn it back to the chairman.
Okay. It looks like there's nothing more on the agenda. Is there anything from the public that you would still like to bring in, Chip? And then Bob.
A couple of points on Schmidt's, Representative Schmidt's memo. The two major portions of county government that's already being done, the jail and the nursing home. The jail in the form of the study that was done a year ago, and the nursing home and the ongoing review that's happening with the new nursing home as far as the utilization of personnel, the number of personnel needed, and if you get into the wage scale, that's a pretty easy metric to come up with. On the control issue of the line items on the budget, I think it's instructive to look at the fuel cost issue that came up earlier. There's no way, as Representative Ogren stated, there's no way to actively know or accurately know what the cost of certain commodities are going to be 6 months or 8 months or 9 months down the line. So in order to effectively manage, you have to be able to say to someone like Jason at the jail, your fuel cost has gone up $40,000. You need to find $40,000 in other purchases that you're not going to make, whether it's in armaments or in other costs that are involved in the jail, and move that money over into the fuel line because you need to keep the place heated. That's the discussion that needs to happen and always happens, or you end up over budgeting. For instance, on the medical line, we have no way of knowing if we're going to get an inmate in that's going to need a significant amount of medical treatment, and that pushes that line way out of sight. So if you start your budget out with too much money, you end up charging the taxpayers too much. The bigger issue, as Representative McCarthy has stated, is the Sheriff's Department. And the part that is the gorilla, the 800-pound gorilla in the room, that nobody seems to want to talk about, is you have a sheriff now, and you had a sheriff previously to this who think that they are constitutionally empowered to ignore any advice or direction from the commissioners. You're never going to solve the budget problem in the sheriff's office until you get over that mountain. The sheriff insists that he is not under the oversight for any purchases in his department by the commission. So until the commissioners can weigh in actively in that argument or in that discussion, you're not going to change anything there. So I think it's going to take a little bit of strong language from you folks to the sheriff to straighten that out. And I, during my tenure, gave him 3 Supreme Court decisions that illustrated exactly what his limitations are, and he chooses to ignore that.
Okay, thank you. Representative McCarthy.
Yes, Mr. Albee, I have in my possession at least a half a dozen Supreme Court decisions relative to lawsuits from county sheriffs against the counties. And they are all exactly on tune with, together, they're in unison. And it states specifically, and the word must is used, county sheriffs must cooperate with the county commissioners unless it interferes with his actual police performance of duty as a police officer. Everything else, they must, according to the Supreme Court, they must cooperate with the county commissioners. And if you want, I'll bring them in for you.
Well, just as a quick response, the sheriff's response to me when I made that same argument was that he feels as though the Supreme Court opinions are advisory. Now, I have a little bit of a connection with the judicial system, and it's not my understanding that Supreme Court decisions are advisory. It's my understanding that Supreme Court decisions are the law of the land. And convincing this sheriff, and for all intents and purposes the previous sheriff, of that is a difficult proposition.
One final statement.
Yes.
I don't think we ought to be discussing the sheriff in this meeting, okay? Our purpose here was to get feedback. We have a subcommittee dealing with the sheriff that is going to be meeting shortly. And if someone has, I will make sure that everyone in the delegation knows that this meeting is going to take place. They can come there and they can discuss at that time the sheriff. We're not here to discuss the sheriff. We're here to discuss anything that
metrics.
The public wanted to say. We're not here to respond and to talk about. I appreciate Mr. Albee's input on the sheriff, and I thank him for that. But we are not here to discuss the operation of the sheriff. That is the subcommittee's responsibility, and I can guarantee that we will take care of it.
Okay, Damon.
Representative Umberger's point aside, it's been known for some time that we would most likely be discussing the sheriff. I'm kind of wondering why he wasn't personally invited to come down, because we all know he's the topic of debate, and he has been for several months. He ought to have been invited, that's at least my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else? And if not, I would, Bob, go ahead.
Bob Bridgham, Eaton. 3 comments, quick ones. First on heating costs. I'm treasurer of my church. We had exactly the same problem, faced with heating costs in the first part of this year. Looked at the degree days of the first few months in North Conway, significantly higher this year than in the past, and actually continued into the later spring. So I'm not surprised by the fact that your heating costs are up, and I think they're up across all your facilities. Yep. It's not unreasonable to check what's happening against both your degree days and the and your costs, yeah. But I doubt very much that it's a problem of leakage. Second, I noted that you spent about 10 to 15 minutes of your time talking about Hale's location. And that seemed like a significant amount at that time. At this point, less so. But I would My concern is that you're providing a service to Hale's location, and I understand for a reasonable, what we hope is a reasonable fee. I would just simply ask that the commissioners take careful note of all the time and energy that goes into that, taking care of that job, and making sure that we are charging appropriately. It's not as though Hales deserves some kind of special subsidy. Third, I congratulate you on what I think is really one of the most difficult things that has to be worked out between the commissioners and the delegation. And that is whenever there's going to be a large capital outlay, to sort of figure out what ballpark you're going to play in. And I think you got to a place that gives some guidance for the commissioners and some sense of agreement among yourselves, however limited it may be. And that's hard. I would personally have preferred a somewhat different place, but that's all right. I did want to address one comment that Representative Umberger made, in which she used as an example of government sort of constantly growing unstoppably the fact that the middle school in Conway has now filled up. A good chunk of the filling came about because SAU 9 moved from a large building in North Conway to fill space in, now to my knowledge, no government grew in that process. I think, as a matter of fact, the superintendent will say that they are more comfortable and more efficient in their new facilities. Now, whether or not that's true, I don't know. But it seems to me that we shouldn't be making a principle that unused space necessarily leads to growth of government, when in fact it may lead to some efficient consolidation of function and perhaps increased comfort. And I don't think we should be against either efficiency or discomfort.
I'll talk to you later.
Okay. Yeah. Representative McCarthy, you have something, or that's it? If not a motion?
So moved.
So moved. 112. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, we're gone.
See you Wednesday.
Oh, when are we gonna?
See you Wednesday, Dorothy.
We got $1 million.
Or as we say,
You'll let us know.
I'll let you know.
we'll come to
They haven't said another.
Later.
Bob, look at the maintenance department.